Hey everyone, this is Mike Del Preti, and you're listening to Context. And this time I'm going to try something new. So, traditionally, Context has been the podcast where I talk to industry leaders about what's changing in real estate. And I've really enjoyed that, but I have an itch. I have an itch I want to scratch, and I want to bring you along with me. So, this is the introduction for a new series of podcasts that I'm going to be doing called The Search for the Holy Grail of Real Estate. So, I kind of picture myself a little bit as the Indiana Jones of real estate. I'm kind of on my own. I teach a class. I like going into the field and doing research, and I like exploring. I like adventure. That's a lot of what drives me as an individual and in a lot of the work that I do. So this seemed like a perfect way to kind of wrap up this new endeavor, this new adventure that I want to have, which is looking for the Holy Grail of real estate. Seems pretty appropriate. So back in March of 2025, I was quoted in the Wall Street Journal talking about the Holy Grail. So what I said, quote, "It's really this idea of a one-stop shop ecosystem in real estate, which has kind of been this holy grail that companies have been searching for years." And that's what I want to dive into here. And I think this is more than just a research piece or more than one podcast interview with somebody. I want to change it up. And I want to do more of what I love, which is field work. I want to go into the field. So, as part of this podcast, I'm going to be traveling around talking to as many really great, smart, experienced leaders, entrepreneurs, folks in the industry as I possibly can. I'm going to start piecing the evidence together. I've got a notebook that I'll be jotting all this stuff down as well. And I'm also going to be sharing my thoughts. So, not every podcast is going to be a sit down interview with somebody, but I really want to invite you, my listeners, my community, my network along with me on this journey. So expect, plenty of me kind of talking to myself, me talking about some research I'm doing, me reflecting on conversations I've had as we go. I think the whole thing will be quite an interesting adventure. And for me doing this, there's some questions I want to answer, like the Holy Grail. What is it? Okay, we know what it is. It's this end-to-end ecosystem, this one-stop shop. But I have a feeling there's more there. As I start to scratch below the surface, I bet there's more there. Who's done it? Who's trying to do it? Who's tried and failed to do it in the past? What works? What doesn't work? What are some lessons learned? Is it legal? Does it work just in the US? Are there people around the world doing the same kind of thing? Why? Why are they doing it? And I think through unpacking all of that, I don't necessarily have a destination in mind. I have a direction, and I'm going to move in that direction, but I don't know what the outcome is going to be, and that's part of the adventure. And I want to bring you along with me as I kind of figure that out. Does it work? Does it not work? What are we going to find? I have this sneaking suspicion that there's a lot of interesting unknowns as part of this process, and that's part of what I want to surface in this research. All right, so to start out, I want to talk a little bit about what the Holy Grail of real estate is and the history behind it. So it's something that folks are talking a lot about now, kind of this 2025, 2026. It's been big. And I think it really started with two things, with Zillow and Rocket. Zillow building the super app, which is really trying to encapsulate these different services into a one-stop shop, right? Home search, brokerage, mortgage, title. And Rocket's doing the same thing, acquiring Redfin and combining all that together. You can see it in their investment deck, right? The exact same thing. Home search, brokerage, mortgage, title, wrapping it all up. But it's not new. This is something that's been around and in the industry for at least a decade. That's kind of my personal exposure to it. I've been tracking and looking at it for about a decade. And if I go all the way back, the first instance where I can recall a company really trying to dive into this was in the UK around 2017, Zoopla. Zoopla is and was the number two real estate portal in the UK behind Rightmove. And they kind of, as part of their strategy, they kind of figured out, hey, we're never going to be number one. We're never going to overtake the number one dominant portal. So instead of going deeper, investing more and more in traffic and trying to beat them in a game we probably can't win, let's go broader. And Zoopla kind of famously spent £500 million, which is a lot of money at the time and for that market, acquiring adjacent businesses. They get into utility switching and financing and all this kind of everything that surrounds the move. And, it was all right. I think I was really interested in it at the time because they were the biggest portal around the world doing this and spending as much money before anybody else, right? This was before anybody else, any other portal acquired a mortgage company or got into financing. But it didn't kind of, I don't know. I don't know if it worked or not. When I wrote about it at the time, I said, this isn't 1 + 1 = 3. This is 1 + 1 = 2.05. So it's not an exponential, really kicking it out of the park here. It was more of an incremental gain, which I think was kind of less than, perhaps they were expecting and I was expecting. And it really raised this question of why? Why isn't it working out? And I don't have an answer for you. I don't know why. It's hard, right? The Holy Grail is hard. That's why so many people are spending so much money trying to build it. That's why I'm doing this podcast, trying to find it, because it is hard. And maybe it exists. Maybe it's a myth. Maybe it doesn't exist. But there's a lot of great examples. And then, going on from 2017, the next place we see it was probably the growth and launch of iBuyers. So Open Door kind of famously had this in the deck. It's like, hey, we're buying and selling homes, and we think we can make money doing that, but it's not really about the house, it's about the transaction. So if we can attach mortgage, then we can make a lot of money, right? We're already attaching title. We have an 85% attach rate on that. We're making money off that. We're just gonna, there was a list in that deck of all the adjacent services they were gonna attach. Same thing, right? It's the exact same playbook. It didn't really work out for them, meaning a couple years after that, they just Open Door closed down their whole mortgage operation, and focused just on the core, which was similar, by the way, to Zoopla. If I go back to Zoopla, they got acquired by a private equity company, went private, and that company separated those two businesses. They said, all right, the portal's over here, and all these other adjacent services, that's over here. These are separate businesses. So these are, I'm not going to go in and say, well, they failed. It didn't work, right? But these are signs of something not working as expected, right? If you separate the businesses, if you close your mortgage operation down, if you stop saying, we're going to reach profitability through adjacent services, those are signs that it's not quite working. Other clues in that space, a couple of years after the iBuyers, were the launch of all these power buyers, right? This idea of buy before you sell. Homeward, Fly Homes, there's a number of companies in that space. And again, at the time, the thing that caught my attention was they had mortgage attach rates of 70, 75, 80%. Crazy. Industry average is something like 15 to 20%. And mortgage attached, that's probably the metric I'll come back to here, because that's like the best metric to say, is this working or not, right? So out of every 10 brokerage transactions helping somebody buy a home, how many, or sell a home, but really it's on the buy side, buy a home, how many of those do you attach a mortgage with? Right? 5%, 10%, 20%. So industry average, 15 to 20%. So if you went around and found a, random local or regional brokerage in your town, and they had their own mortgage partnership or separate mortgage company they're working with, chances are they're attaching mortgage to anywhere between 10, 15, and 20% of all their transactions that close. And Berkshire Hathaway Home Services is kind of like the best example of an industry incumbent who's been doing this for a number of years. Home Services of America is the brokerage operation, and they also own Prosperity Home Loans, which is the mortgage operation. So they work together quite well, and in a very legal way, not violating RESPA, which is something I'll dig into as part of this series, they're able to attach mortgage. So anyway, you've got this industry average of 10, 15, 20%, 20% being kind of this high watermark. And then boom, you've got power buyers coming on the scene with 80% mortgage attach. Wow, like there's something going on there. So that's something I'll dig into as part of this series as well. Like, what can we learn from that? And that kind of brings us up to today with Zillow and Rocket. And I mean, those are two of the biggest companies in the space spending billions of dollars building this ecosystem. So we're going to pay attention to that. It doesn't mean, they're going to win. Um, but if there was a company out there that gets close to winning, it would be one of those two. And it just simply because of the scale and the resources they have, right? Open Door was effectively a startup, very little brand recognition at the time, high customer acquisition costs. It had to buy its way into this space. Zillow and Rocket are huge companies with huge assets at their disposal. And what's interesting is they're coming at it from different angles, right? Zillow's coming at it from the home search angle. They've got tons of traffic and an infrastructure built around generating and distributing leads to agents. And Rocket's a mortgage company, right? They're the largest consumer mortgage company on the planet. They've been doing this for decades. They know what they're doing. They're very good. They have thousands of loan officers. So they're going to be approaching it from the mortgage standpoint. So I don't know. Is it going to be different? I'm not sure. We're going to watch. And but it's still it's a great time to explore it and to see what's going on. It seems more relevant today than it ever has in the past. One other brief bit of history I want to share is my own. So my last operational role at a company was a real estate portal down in New Zealand called TradeMe. And actually, we were much more than just a real estate portal. We kind of combined all the verticals, all the classifieds, all the marketplace businesses into one. So New Zealand is a small country, but this is a big business. Publicly listed, multi-billion dollars. I was there kind of 2012 to 2016, and my job was head of strategy. So I was looking for M&A opportunities and looking after corporate strategy. So we had the top real estate vertical, we had the top jobs vertical, the top automotive vertical, and the top general items marketplace. So we had a lot. And as part of my time there, what I recommended and what we did was get into the insurance space. So we bought an insurance company. And the idea behind that was, geez, we know when people are looking at houses, we know when people are looking to move, when they're looking to rent, we actually know when they're looking to buy cars as well, right? Why don't we just give them a great offer at the right moment for insurance, homeowners insurance, renters insurance, automotive insurance? And, we went through the process and long story short, I won't bore you, but it turned out to be a lot harder than we thought, a lot harder than I thought. I've always in my mind, as I've explained it, I've always used this 4X number. I said it cost 4 times as much as we thought, and we got a quarter of the traction we thought we'd get. Which doesn't make any logical sense, right? If you know all these things about people and you just give them an offer, right? A good offer. We gave them a discount and everything. You think they'd click, but they didn't. So I can kind of speak from my own personal experience in this space as well. Oftentimes, the search for the Holy Grail looks great on paper or in a PowerPoint deck, but the reality is very, very different. And that kind of leads into the challenges, right? This isn't an easy thing. Oh, you just go from 0 to 1, A to B, and it just takes a lot of money and a lot of hard work to get there. It's not the case. There are significant challenges in this. And this is something I've spoken about in the past on my podcast with Jeremy Waxman, the CEO of Zillow, Varun, the CEO of Rocket. There are significant challenges around brand, right? What do you call these different services? What does the handoff look like from one segment to another? Are you going to offer is it bundle and save? Are you going to offer a discount? What other kind of incentives can you offer to consumers? We try this, we try that. I don't have all the answers, but I want to do the field work. I want to find out. I want to see what's out there and what other folks have identified as the challenge and what they're doing about it. And then look at what's worked and what hasn't worked. And I think the underlying challenge, perhaps the biggest one through all of this is this something consumers actually want? Right? And I can see both sides of the coin, and I've heard both stories, right? On the one hand, yeah, consumers want an easy experience. They want an easy transaction. On the other side, I've heard things like, well, consumers want, best of breed solutions. I want the best brokerage, the best search experience, the best mortgage, the best title. I don't necessarily want them all wrapped in together. And again, I don't have the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but there's people out there looking for it. and I want to suck the insight and knowledge out of their brains, see what they've discovered. Now, the search for the Holy Grail is one of the big power moves that I've been talking about for a while. In fact, it was one of the big topics of a presentation I gave last year in Madrid at Property Portal Watch. Let's listen to a few minutes of that presentation. I want to talk today about the search for the Holy Grail in real estate. This is the biggest power move going on, I would say, globally in the world of real estate portals. The Holy Grail in real estate is the end-to-end ecosystem, the one-stop shop, combining home search, brokerage, mortgage title, all those adjacent services together in one spot. This is nothing new. Back in 2018, I was talking about this. Nearly all of the real estate portals are expanding across the value stream, providing more services to consumers and agents. Why are they doing that? Trying to make more money, right? When you tap out the core business, you need other things. As soon as we start selling people mortgages, we're going to make a lot of money. Turns out it's really hard. So what's happening right now? Rocket, one of the largest, if not the largest mortgage company in the US, acquired Redfin, a real estate portal, and they're kind of leading the charge. They're combining home search, buy and sell, brokerage operations, financing, title and closing, right? They want to provide this one-stop shop, this ecosystem where they kind of capture consumers. Zillow, the number one portal in the US, is doing the same. Home search, brokerage, mortgage, title. And a whole bunch of other stuff, by the way, but the main components are there. Zillow talks about their super app. The super app is this walled garden, this closed ecosystem, a one-stop shop. What's interesting about watching this play out in the US is Zillow and Rocket are approaching it from two totally different angles. So we're going to be able to see how it plays out and what works. Zillow's approaching it with the traffic. Zillow's got a ton of consumer eyeballs, exponentially more than Rocket and Redfin combined. They've also got an established agent network. Zillow's working with the agents. They've been doing that for a decade, 2 decades. They have relationships. Those are the two areas where Rocket is weaker. Rocket, on the other hand, is approaching it from the other direction. They have thousands of mortgage loan officers. And it turns out, as much as people have tried to disrupt mortgage with technology, it hasn't happened yet. It's still dependent on mortgage loan officers, human beings like you and me, in an office, in front of a desk, in front of a phone. That's important. So Zillow, Redfin, and Rocket are coming at it from the mortgage side. And they're also coming at it with a huge advantage in their marketing spend, nearly $1 billion. A lot of money. The other really interesting and important point out of what's happening right now in the US with this is these are very large companies, very profitable companies with a lot of cash to invest and spend. These are some of the biggest, most profitable businesses in the portal space. And what do you do with that cash? One of the things you do is you advertise, right? I don't care what you're selling. If you run a Super Bowl commercial, you're going to get attention. And that takes a lot of money and a lot of capital. So it's always easy to say, this time it's different, but this time it might be different. These companies are spending huge amounts of money. And just like the craze of iBuying in the United States a number of years ago, when you start advertising to consumers, they're going to start asking questions. They're going to ask everybody questions, whether you offer that or not. The other interesting thing about Rocket's move in this space is we're moving from bundle to bundle and save. So bundling all these services together and then selling them to consumers, that's great for the portal because they make more money. It's not necessarily solving an actual problem for the consumers. But if you bundle and save, that's different. That's where things get interesting. If as a consumer, as a home buyer, I can save $20,000, this is from Rocket's investment deck. This is their public pitch. I can tell you who doesn't like this. Mortgage companies, real estate agents, right? Anybody who's clipping the ticket. But Rocket's saying, hey, we're big. And if you bundle all this stuff with us and stay in our ecosystem, we'll rebate you $20,000. You'll save $20,000. But out of all of this, I think, one of the most important things of the end-to-end ecosystem is there will be winners and losers. All right? This is not like the portal wars and traffic where it's non-zero sum. The end-to-end ecosystem is zero sum. There are only a finite number of transactions in every market. And every transaction they capture is one less that goes out to the rest of the market. And this isn't going to be companies going out of business, right? The way this is going to play out is the agent down the road or the mortgage company down the road. Last year they did 10 deals. This year they do 8. They don't know why, right? Why did I do less? I don't know. It's the market's fluctuating. No, it's not the market's fluctuating. It's very, very large players in this space are spending billions of dollars capturing those consumers before they even get to you. That's why we have to pay attention to this. So that's it. There we have it. I'm excited about jumping off on this new adventure, searching for the Holy Grail. Is it real? Is it not real? What works? What doesn't work? I totally want to bring you along for this journey. And I would love for your thoughts, questions, feedback. So if you know how to get in touch with me, drop me a line. Happy to talk. I'm excited to hit the road, invite experts in, have conversations, have chats, do the research, and have you along as part of that process. So here we go.